Hey Code Crew, this was a talk that I did at the SwiftTO conference last week. And just to give you a little bit of context to this talk, the audience, the attendees to this conference were Swift developers and Swift enthusiasts, mostly Swift developers. And so my talk is about inspiring them to share their knowledge. And I did this through my own journey and how I went from a Swift and Objective-C developer to doing what I do now. So it was really fun and exciting, and I was pretty nervous because I hadn't done any public speaking in a very long time. In any case, I hope you enjoy it. Hello, testing. Hello? Hello? Yeah, okay. Man, when I wrote that, I didn't think he was gonna read it out and use it as my intro. But, so it's a little bit embarrassing. But hey everyone, my name is Chris Ching, and for the last 6 years, I've been teaching non-coders how to code in Swift. And I do this through my YouTube channel and my website, codewithchris.com. But the thing is, I never dreamed of becoming a YouTuber. I was actually an Objective-C developer before. And through a series of weird twists and turns and unexpected decisions, I found a passion for teaching, and well, here I am today. And I didn't think I'd be doing this 6 years later. But the point of this talk today is not to inspire you guys to also become YouTubers. Instead, I want to inspire you guys with my story to keep your door open for the unexpected and wonderful things that can happen by doing the 4 things that I'm going to show you how to do today. Now, before this turns into some weird motivational speech, I assure you it's not. It's not going to be fluffy like that. I have some concrete examples that I'm going to share with you. All of these people here have had life-changing things happen to themselves. And when I look back at my own journey and their journeys, I realized that there were 4 things that I identified that we all did in common. And that's really what I want to share with you today. And I'm going to do that in the context of my own journey. So number 1 is I got involved with the developer community. Now, why is this significant? For me, it was very significant because that was how I got exposed to iOS development. And had it not been for this, I don't think I would have. So let me explain. When I graduated at my first job, I worked with Microsoft Silverlight. And I see we have some Silverlight developers here. And it was a lot of fun. At that point, it was a brand new technology to enable rich user experiences on the web. It was new, not many people working with it. It was visual, it was fun for me. But it was a pretty tight-knit community because it wasn't that widespread. And as a result, I got involved with the Toronto Silverlight user group. And this user group was started by 2 founders from Mississauga who had a consulting company. So I helped them organize events monthly, and I would sometimes speak at these events or I would attend them. But the bottom line is that I got to know these organizers really well. And at the time, I didn't know it, but eventually they would become my bosses. Because you see, I left my first job, tried to start my own business, failed, tried to start another one, failed, and then eventually started freelancing for these 2 guys. And then I joined their consulting company as maybe the 12th employee or something like that. But it was at this second company that I got involved with Windows Phone development. So you can see a trend here. Everything I work on just kind of like dies. Let's hope that's not the case for Swift. But Windows Phone development, so being good at that led me to become that company's first Objective-C developer. And being the first Objective-C developer and only one at that company was kind of tough for me because I struggled to learn memory management. I didn't have a more senior mentor to guide me. And I didn't have Objective-C team members to bat ideas back and forth with. So every obstacle that I overcame, every hurdle that I solved, it was really hard won, but at the same time, it was really satisfying. I'm sure as you guys being developers, you know how it feels like to solve a really tough problem. And I think this slide really epitomizes that feeling. All right, yes, finally got it. So when our CTO said you should share our knowledge, I was totally on board with that. You know, spending so much time trying to figure these things out, I thought I could really help other people in case other people were facing the same problems and save them a ton of time. So that brings me to my second point, which is sharing your knowledge. To me, for me, that took the form of a WordPress blog. So I just whipped something up. I started documenting my day-to-day learnings and the things I was figuring out with no expectations of who would read it and trying to build an audience or anything like that. But I thought if I could just help someone, in the odd case that they were trying to figure out the same problem that I was, I would save them a ton of time. And I continued to do this. I continued to document my learnings. And over time, I started to realize I had a pretty in-demand skill set. Because up till that point, I would tell my friends and family that I did .NET, I did C#, I did Windows Phone. What's that, right? And then now, when I was doing this, I told people I built iPhone apps. And instantly, they got it. But then the next question was, I have an app idea, right? So it seemed like back then, at least in 2013, everyone had their own app idea, and everyone thought it'd be the next big thing. It'd be the next $1 million, billion-dollar app idea. And so I thought, hey, it'd be kind of cool to try to teach people how to build their own apps, because everyone seems to want to. But I was really doubtful because, how can you try to teach a non-developer Objective-C? I mean, I was having enough trouble with it. So it was a fun challenge for me to see if I could teach someone who's never coded a single line of code before to build their own app using Objective-C. And so I decided to use the video to do this because I thought for someone who had never coded before, being able to see me go through the motions would be very beneficial. And choosing video naturally led me to YouTube. And so I bought a $30 mic and I started to produce videos. Now, this snapshot kind of documents my 6-year journey on YouTube so far, but we're going to get back to this slide. The most important thing is that I got started. That brings me to my third point. I got started. Now, this might seem kind of like a cop-out point, but actually getting started is really, really tough because there's so many obstacles to stop us from getting started, from doing anything. And going back to Tim's talk about the amygdala, it's actually natural for your brain to stop you from doing unknown, risky, uncertain things. It's like a safety mechanism. And so for me, I had a lot of obstacles that I had to overcome just to start putting videos on YouTube. And so I want to talk about a couple of them, some of my biggest ones. So number one is I knew my friends and family were going to see these videos, and so I wanted them to be perfect. My first video on YouTube was actually 8.5 minutes long, but I remember I kept re-recording it. It took me days just to get it right, and I thought it was perfect at that time. But now when I look back at that first video, I still cringe. So you're just going to have to believe that you're going to get better at it over time. It's like a skill. Number two is imposter syndrome, and Tim touched on this. It's just that feeling when you get up there and you're talking just like I am now. What qualifies me to be up here to teach and to talk? And whenever this still creeps up on me today, and when it does, I try to remember that it's like a path, it's a journey. So there are people ahead of you, way ahead of you, experts, and there are people behind you just getting started. And those are the people that you're helping, that you're enriching their lives, and you're trying to bring them up to where you are. And so that's what I try to keep in mind. And actually, I keep a page on my website with all of the heartfelt thanks and comments that I get. When I feel like an imposter, I read this and it reassures me that I'm doing the right thing and I'm changing people's lives and I'm enriching their lives and I should keep doing what I'm doing. Another thing that might help you to get started is the thought that you are making the world a more efficient place. Because think about some of the problems that you're solving at work. Sometimes they can take days. And by you sharing that knowledge to the community, you could potentially be saving other developers hours of time and productivity that they could dedicate to something else. And thereby, you're making the world a better and more efficient place. But getting started is one thing. The next step is you have to have the right expectations. Because going back to this graph, you can see that it was a really long journey, 6 years. And that is the 1-year mark, and that's when Swift came out. And along this way, I also had 2 kids, probably that plateau there, but I didn't post regularly, right? These big red bars represent months at a time where I didn't post at all. And then the yellow arrows are times when I posted like a madman. It probably would have been better if I was consistent with it, but I was doing it for the right reasons. I knew I was helping people. I was getting good feedback from people thanking me and stuff like that. So that's what kept me going. And had I stopped early on, or had I had that thought of, oh, I'm going to make X amount of dollars in the first year, or have X amount of subscribers in 6 months or something like that, I probably would have quit in the first month. And then I never would have seen that tail end. I speak from experience because at 8 months, I did quit my job to try to make this my full-time gig. And there was a combination of different reasons for me quitting my full-time job. But the biggest reason was I discovered this satisfaction in teaching that I never knew existed. I couldn't understand why anybody would want to be a teacher. But once I started hearing feedback from people and seeing how people reacted when they ran their first little bit of code, it reminded me when I got exposed to programming at first, that wonderment, that awe, that joy, right? And to think that I could help other people experience that really blew my mind. And I was like, this is way more satisfying than what I was doing at work. And so I was like, if I could do this full time, that would be my dream job. Just giving people this feeling, changing their lives and starting them on this coding journey like I had when I discovered. The only problem was that YouTube really wasn't paying me anything. And so I quit my job and I ended up doing a bunch of freelancing. That's the big blue part there. I had built up a little bit of an audience, so I had some course. I made a course and I was selling that. That's the green part. And YouTube represents that little red sliver. But like I said, I kept doing what I was doing. I kept producing videos. And 6 years later, the green parts are my course sales and the red part is my YouTube revenue. And I would never have guessed that this would become my life. But I love what I'm doing. But you see, my story isn't unique because there's Sean Allen. He started sharing his tech job interview experiences on YouTube, and he was getting great feedback, and he decided to continue to produce videos. It was also a creative outlet for him. He got involved with the Swift community on Twitter, and now 2.5 years later, he's made the leap to become a full-time content creator with some freelancing on the side. And then there's Mark Moikins. He always loved sharing his knowledge with his coworkers at work, but one day, no one was in the office, so he decided to record a video, put it on YouTube for his coworkers to watch. Little did he know that it was public, and he started getting good feedback on it, which motivated him to continue producing videos. And now 3 years later, he's built up this little audience that it might be possible for him and his wife to travel the world with no end date. And this was a totally unexpected result from him just teaching online. And he also had to overcome a huge sense of imposter syndrome. And then there's John Sundell. I don't think this guy needs any introduction, but this year he's made the leap to become a full-time content creator. He stopped doing his freelancing. And there's this tweet that I really love because it really captures the essence of my fourth point. Now I'll read it to you guys in case anyone can't read it. Every blog, podcast, and GitHub project started out with an audience of 0. If you want to create content or open source, do it because you love it and keep working hard, even when no one is paying attention. Just look at my number of readers. It's all about time and consistency. So that goes back to just doing it for the right reasons. So just to recap, number 1, get involved with the community. You guys being here, that's on the right track. And don't forget Twitter, Reddit, user groups like I did. Start sharing your knowledge. This doesn't have to be really hard. Just document your day-to-day learnings on Twitter or on Instagram. It can be as easy as that. And then get started. The best advice I can give you is to take imperfect action. I love that term because that perfectly captures, it's not going to be perfect at the start. And having the right expectations. So for me, it took 6 years, but I think that had I been more consistent and maybe more focused on it, it would have been shorter. For a lot of the people that I highlighted in this talk, it was about 2.5 to 3 years. Remember John's tweet? And then I have a quote from Steve Jobs that really captures the essence of my talk here. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. This approach has never let me down and has made all the difference in my life. So by you guys getting out into the community, putting yourself out there, sharing your knowledge, you're in essence putting more dots on the map. And you just have to have some faith that those dots will connect in some weird, unexpected, life-changing way in the future. So I've got some of my contact info there. If you want to reach out and chat, if you guys were thinking about starting your own journey, feel free to reach out, and contact info of some of the other people I mentioned in this talk as well. Thank you so much. You guys have been a great audience.
Thank you so much, Chris.